everybody. Welcome to Watercolor Wednesday at Dandelion Cottage. I'm Leslie Watkins. I hope everybody's having a great beginning of their summer. Here where I am, it's been really hot and dry. We are approaching a drought situation, so a lot of watering going on in the gardens. And today I'm going to be painting the last of the peonies. Sad to see them go. But I've got some here. And the ones I'll be painting today are these. Look at that gorgeous thing. Okay, so the petals are dropping. Time to get busy. And here I'll turn you down. So I've got a little piece of hot press watercolor paper. I'm using 3 colors, yellow, red, and blue. And you've seen the peonies. Just going to get a brush out. And I think today I'm not going to bother with a sketch. I'm just going to go straight to the flower. So there's a couple of them here. And I think it would be nice just to do a loose impressionistic picture of the bouquet. So I'm going to give my paper a little spritz. Just to dampen it slightly. These spritzers are really handy. They're very inexpensive. You can get 2 for $3, and I'll list that below. And I'm going to give my palette a little spritz too while I'm at it. There we go. So I'm just going to begin by lightly indicating the areas that I want the flowers to be. So I've got one big one here. Bring you in a little closer. And another one over here. This month I'm offering a class, an online class in painting peonies, and you can find out more about it here at dandelioncottagedesign.com. And if you're interested, you can register by subscribing to Notes from Dandelion Cottage, and you will find the link to that also at this website, dandelioncottagedesign.com. And in addition to the peony painting class, I'm also going to have a seascape painting class. So if either of those sound interesting, you want to find out more, please check it out. Alright, so there's my beginning of the areas where the blossoms will be. Now what I want to do is just get some of the foliage . And I'm mixing up a kind of a light pale green using the yellow and the blue, and I'm starting by getting a kind of a medium. Show you the corner here. Here's a good medium green. And then I'm adding more water to that just to dilute it. And basically I'm just making leaf shapes And it's great practice for you to take your watercolors and your brushes and just see what kind of shapes your brush can make. Now I'm taking more of the red and I'm just going to go into some of these darker areas. One of the things I'll be covering in the watercolor class, which is coming right up, I know a lot of you have been waiting patiently for it, and no worries. You're going to get that link in a couple of days. Is how to shade a form, and I think that's one of the essential things that all artists need to understand in order to be able to portray a convincing shape. Now there's a little bit of yellow. I can see the anthers poking up in here. Just drop that in. And I'm going back into my red mixture. And now I'm going to start to pick out a couple of these petals and begin to draw with the tip of my brush. These peonies are just amazing. The on this particular cultivar, the tips are paler than the base of the petals, and it gives this wonderful kind of a double tone effect. And for those of you who are wondering which cultivar this is, I don't know offhand. And it may even be one that has self-sown now in my garden. So already with just a couple of minutes worth of painting, we're already starting to see something develop here. I'm going to go back into those leaves a little. And I'm taking a slightly darker mixture of green. Get you in the middle of the, there we go. And I want to vary the tonalities. I don't want it all to be the same. So I might just drop a little bit of yellow. And I'm not over mixing the colors. Just letting the red, yellow, and blue sort of blend away. Now I think I want a little bit of a background tonality, so I'm just going to mix a little of everything that's on my palette together to get a kind of a neutral tone. So let's see what this looks like. There we go, and this is going to give it more of a painterly effect, a little bit less of your kind of standard botanical illustration. And by doing this, I can begin to think about value. So I'm just cutting back on the white of the paper so that I can start to play with my values a little bit. And if you subscribe to Notes to learn more about the upcoming classes, you will also learn about a mini course that I have coming up on watercolor painting, and one of the things that I'll be emphasizing is value, which to my mind is one of the most important things that you can master to make a real difference in your pictures. Okay, so there's a kind of a start. So we've got some lights and we've got some middle tones begun. I'm going to start getting a little more pigment on there to make it a little bit darker, but it's still got a nice kind of a loose, washy kind of a feel to it. At the same time, I think you can begin to get a sense of the light passing into the picture. So for instance, if I go back with a stronger mix here and begin to deepen some of these shadow areas, it helps to make the lights look lighter, and that's what you do with value. It's kind of a balance, kind of a game you play with light and dark. You know, what you do in one place of your picture influences what goes on in another place. I see a little bit of green in here. Here we go. So this is pretty damp. I'm not able to get a hard edge at this time because the paper's not dry enough. So before I can go any further to begin to develop my drawing and the shapes of the leaves and the petals, I'm going to have to let my picture dry for a little bit. So, but before I put it aside, I will go back into the leaves and add some more darks there so that can blend. And now, and here in these areas, you can see I'm able to get a little bit more of a hard edge. And, you know, I think something that's important is to observe your specimen as closely as you can, but also keep an eye on your design. I think, you know, it's very easy to go either one way or the other. Some people are more design prone and they forget to check on their reference from nature, and other people go the other way. They end up with a near photographic recreation of what it is that they're looking at without thinking too much about design. So try to keep a balance of those things. So I'm going to add a leaf here because I feel like there's just too much green concentrated at the bottom, and I want it to be more of an overall design. So I'm just going to put another leaf up here to help balance that. And by doing so, I can also help to describe the shape of the flower beneath it. And I think we'll have a little echo coming off in this direction. Let's see if we can't put a little more definition in here now. There we go. I do have an overhead fan on today, and that's helping to increase the drying time a little bit. So all I'm doing is looking at the petals, seeing where they are springing from, where the central axis of the flower is, and just kind of going after the gesture. That's too much water. Just blot that up. Had a lot of wildlife around here lately. Lots of visitors coming through. We had a mama porcupine last night and her little baby. And today, there was actually early this morning, that baby bear was back again. He's on his own, he or she. Feel a little bit sorry for it, but hopefully it'll find its way in the world without getting into too much trouble. Now there's a little bit of blue in this red, so I'm going to add a tiny bit of blue, still keeping it on the red violet side. Just drop that in there. A little bit too much blue. It's a very subtle thing, so take your time and go slow and look and see. Stand back every so often and just see what's happening. mixing up a little more green. I'm just deepening the value as the petal turns down and goes underneath the blossom there. Get a little more paint on my brush. I'm running out, so I'm just mixing up another puddle. It's good practice when you sit down to paint to just get your paints wet if they've been allowed to dry overnight. Just get them wet. Just give them a little spritz, and then make some puddles so that you have a go-to area. There we go. It's better. So I'm just dropping the paint in, and then I can pull it out just to lighten it. I'm just diluting it with more water as I come away from the blossom. So I can do that same thing down here. So if I drop some darker paint here under the flower and then pull that out with a little more yellow and a little more water, I can begin to just shade that leaf a little bit. So I can do the same thing here. Just pull it all together. Darken that up a little bit more. There we go. Okay, so now I'm just going to go back into my flowers. And I'm drawing with the tip of my brush. here and there. And this petal needs to get a little bit darker under here. And I can bring the red down into the center of the flower and begin to pick out some of the texture. And I'm just going to soften some of those edges. And to do that, I'm just taking a damp brush without paint and just going around and just making a softer transition. Now I do want to get a nice dark accent, so I'm mixing some red violet. I'm going to drop a little of that in these areas where it's darker. And by doing that, it's still a little too wet to really stay in one place, but I think that just by adding that, starting to get some of these darker accents in there, you can really begin to see how that form begins to develop. And I can put a very pale transition on these very light petals. There we go. And just soften that transition. Now I can't see the middle of this one, but I can still indicate where the center is by the way the petals all kind of point back down there. So that's just part of the anatomy of the flower. Let me see if I can get one nice juicy dark right in there. Maybe that'll stay. So that's the beginning. And I'll come back to this a little later after it's had a chance to dry. I can play with the tonality of the background, both the color and the value, to make changes. So for instance, let me see if I can illustrate this for you. So over here, going away from the light, it can be certainly darker. So if I add a little more of this kind of a violet mixture and make that nice and dark, I'm getting there. What happens is that as I increase the value on the dark side, the lighter side begins to look brighter. So you just kind of sneak up on that, watching as you go. And just be careful you don't do too much too soon. Just build it up as you need to. And there might be a couple of places in here. So there we go. So that's another way, that's another approach that you can use to paint your flowers by using the surrounding area to help to describe the light and form. Okay, so I think I'll leave you there. I will post a picture of the painting when it's done, so you can see the finished piece. Okay, and in the meantime, please check out the website dandelioncottagedesign.com. Subscribe to Notes, and you will learn about all of the classes that I have coming right up. There's going to be a bunch of them, so you won't want to miss out on that. Thank you so much for joining me today. Stay well, stay happy, and stay creative. That's all for now.